you. Such an honor to be before you today. And I do have a presentation, and I'll try to go through it a little fast, and I know you probably have a lot of questions, so I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. The very first part of the presentation, I'd like to give a lot of the information. So we know Detroit Public Schools, and in the presentation, you'll see information for approximately 10 years in a lot of the slides that we have accumulated. And it will reference enrollment, how enrollment has been in the school district for the last 10 years, how many positions have been reduced in the school district, all of the things that have taken place to kind of stabilize the school district, and all the initiatives that we're currently underway, and some of them we've already done. And where are we today in some of the legislation, and what is the legislation going to do for Detroit Public Schools? So some history, and you'll see in 2005, and I'll use my pointer if that's okay, that the budget at that time was approximately $1.5 billion, and today is about 700. Last year we closed the book $714 million. So less than half as far as the budget is concerned. As far as the enrollment, you see in the bars, the expenditures you see in the bars, and then the revenue side is also in this solid line. And you see also our enrollment, which is in the broken red line. And you see as our enrollment has been decreasing, also our revenues and expenditures have been increasing. And then you'll see over in the last 3 years that our enrollment has kind of stabilized. We're not losing as many students. And you'll see on the very bottom that the operating deficit for that year. So you'll see over about 10 years ago, we started having deficits in the school district. In fiscal 11, we had a surplus of $43 million, and that is primarily due to the ARA or stimulus funds that came into school districts. And then in fiscal year 12, we actually issued $250 million worth of bonds, which show here, and it shows as a profit, but we actually had a $42 million deficit if you take out the bonds that the school district issued. Here, again, it shows our enrollment on the bottom, and our enrollment has been going down approximately 10.4% per year. And then you'll see again over here the last 3 years that it has been stabilizing. And this year, in 15-16, which is not shown, the school district lost about 900 students. And you see how our employees have been reduced from almost 16,000, now we're approximately 6,000. This shows our buildings. 10 years ago, we had approximately 255 buildings, and now we have 96. In the last 3 years, we haven't closed any buildings. And this, if you look at our enrollment, as we close buildings, we lost enrollment. As we close buildings, we lost enrollment. And then in fiscal 13, the EAA took place, and we lost quite a bit of enrollment there. And then since then, we kept our buildings the same, and our enrollment has, like I said, stabilized. We're not as efficient as we used to be, whereas before, on the average, each school had 553 students. Now we're about 483 students per school. Some of the things that have taken place over time is that employees have taken a 10% concession. We have sold a lot of our assets. We have reduced our employee groups by 10,000 in the last 10 years. Also, we closed 159 schools. There's been a lot of modifications to health care, to the employees' health care, employee severance plans, all these efforts to get the financial situation of Detroit Public Schools under control. And we have an enrollment stabilization campaign, which is starting to, and it's already, you saw the last 3 years, it's bearing fruits. Some of the current situation, we just finished our audit, and on the left you'll see our revenues, and you'll see most of the money that the school district receives comes from the state. We have some property tax that comes in, federal funds, and then other funds. On the average, you get approximately 14.2 per student, and that a foundation grant, which is what we call a general fund, which is pretty much unrestricted, it's about 72. Last year was about approximately 7296, which means we receive a lot of grants because of the type of students that we serve. There's a lot of free and reduced. There's quite a bit of needs in a school district. Therefore, we qualify for a variety of grants. Where did the money go? You can see most of it went into salaries and benefits, and then non-personnel will be utilities, maintenance, all those other things, textbooks and so forth. And then the top, you'll see over there we have debt, which is a legacy debt. In the next slide, we'll show you that last year, in 14-15, we actually lost $46 million. But if you go over to the right, and you see that if we exclude the debt, the school district operationally actually had a surplus of $13 million. And you'll see on the bottom that we received the 14.2, then we used 13.9 for our operations, and then the rest of it, about $1.2 million, $1,300 went to pay the debt. So if the debt is taken away from the school district is positioned to succeed and thrive in this environment. So there has been legislation, Senate Bill 710, that has been introduced to provide Detroit Public Schools with $750 million, and $550 million is to pay for our legacy debt primarily, and then $200 million for a startup, for a new Detroit Community Schools, which will use the money to update some of the buildings and other needs that it has. So what is the debt that the school district currently has? It's in bonds. We issued bonds in 2011, 2012, so the remaining balance is approximately $245 million as of December 31st. We have state aid notes. Those, again, are short-term loans. And the balances as of December 31st were approximately 96 and 66 million. We also haven't been contributing to the retirement system as we should, so we're behind in our payments to our pension, which is a state pension system, approximately $117 million. And also we had $51 million in trade debt, which is primarily vendors that we do business with. So altogether, it was $575 million. We had $66 million on hand, which left us approximately $509 million debt. And we expect by the end of this year, June 30th, our fiscal year ends in June 30th, that we would have approximately $515 million in debt. So why act now? Detroit Public Schools is running out of cash, basically. We have met all the thresholds of where we can borrow. So in April, or by the end of the year, this year, June 30th, we expect to be at approximately a negative 45. We will need $45 million between now and April to cover all our costs. I'm sorry, now in June. In April is where we start having issues with running out of cash. And then by June 30th, we expect to need approximately $45 million. And then by August, we need approximately 126 million in order for us to survive. So that is the urgency why legislation was introduced, and it needs to pass. Some of the information that some of the things that we have actually done in Detroit Public Schools, we have reduced 60 departments down to 16 now. So, and they're under 5 divisions. And this is the division that I'm in charge of. So it's a much more simpler, efficient organization today. If legislation is passed to give the necessary funds that is needed to Detroit Public Schools, then Detroit Public Schools can strongly focus on academics. And these are just examples of some of the things that we want to pay attention. A lot of our attention now is driven by our financial situation. So we want to focus on academics. Currently, we have some of the reorganization that we have done is that we eliminated positions in the central office and then moved a lot of other positions from central office into networks. In the networks, we have 6 networks in the school district that are supporting approximately 16 schools each. So there's a lot more support that is going directly to the schools. This is a graph, some information. This has that I got the other day. And it has to do with the ACT score. And these are the 2015 ACT scores. These are the latest scores. And these are school districts. The school districts are listed here that have very similar socioeconomic characteristics as our school district. And 3 of the most prominent is household income, unemployment, and parental education status in those school districts. And the bubble, the size of the bubble tells you how many free and reduced lunch applications are in the school district. So you see most of the bubbles are approximately the same size. And then on the bottom, you'll see how much money each school district is spending on instruction. And Detroit is right here. So Detroit is spending a little bit over $7,000 for instruction, which is only one other school district spends more than us on instruction. And Detroit Public Schools average is 16.5 on the ACT. The only Saginaw is higher than us. And the state average is approximately 19.1 points. And we have 16.5. So we have some work to do. But I thought this was a very interesting slide. So the transformation of DPS has already started. Like I mentioned earlier, we have reduced about 100 positions in central office January 1st. We have overhauled our procurement process. We have made changes to our benefits. We have, and we're still aligning our grants with all the district needs. So at this point, we have positioned the school district. If legislation passes and gives us the necessary assistance that we need, then we can, like I said earlier, we can survive and we can thrive, and Detroit Public Schools will not go back into deficit anymore. This shows what some of the changes that we made, and you can see how a central office now makes about 5% of the budget, where a few years ago it was almost at double, at 9%. And then you can see the positions, how they have been reduced, and most of the positions are at the schools, obviously. So if we do get the aid from the legislation, what would that look like? So currently, the school district receives the state foundation allowance, property taxes, and federal and other revenues. So this is the money that's coming in, and then we spend it on our staff, on our buildings, our operations, and then on our debt. So if the legislation, the proposed legislation passes in its current form, what would happen, the property taxes, there will be two school districts, an old school district and a new school district. So in the old school district, on the bottom, the property taxes that are currently coming to the school district will be going to the old school district, and then it will pay off. Then the old school district will also have the $750 million debt that will be the age. So the property taxes over time will pay off the operating debt and the startup cost. In the new school district, the foundation allowance, currently the foundation allowance for the school district is made up of the property taxes and the state foundation allowance. So for example, the school district currently gets $7,434. So approximately $1,400 of that comes from property taxes locally. The other $6,000 or so comes from the state. So in the future, the state will send the school district the whole $7,434. So there will not be any property taxes that will be going into the new co until the debt is paid. So that currently, that's approximately, last year we received approximately $66 million from the property taxes. So that's going to be, in the future, that is going to be made by the state, basically. So the other revenues, the federal and the startup revenue, will come into the new school district, and then, again, the school district will operate, and it will pay for the teachers, all the staff, the buildings, the operations, and so forth. And then the new school district will not have the debt anymore like the current district does. So this is an illustration of how long we expect the tax base to keep growing. And then as the tax base grows, it pays the debt. And then in approximately 10, 11 years, that debt should be paid. This graph shows pretty much what all of the debt that Detroit Public Schools has, not just the operating debt. And so this portion here, the pension portion, is the school district. Every school district in the state of Michigan belongs in the state retirement system. So the state retirement system, the pension part of it, has approximately $26 billion unfunded actuarial accrued liability. Detroit Public Schools makes up approximately 4% of payroll. So 4% of that $26 billion is attributed to Detroit Public Schools. Also, the state retirement system, or what is commonly known as MEPSERS, Michigan Public Schools Employees Retirement System, also has approximately $11 billion unfunded accrued actuarial liability on the benefit side, the OPEBs. So, which is not shown here, and it's approximately, Detroit Public Schools share is approximately $445 million. Also, this is the school loan revolving fund, and when the school district has about $1.5 billion in capital bonds over here, so the payments that come, we're levying 13 mills. The 13 mills that we levy is not enough to make the bond payments that are necessary, so the school district is borrowing from the school loan revolving fund. Right now, we're about $196 million that we owe to that fund. And as the bonds are paid, then the millage will go to pay this as well in the future. And then over here, you'll see our operating debt, and then also the $51 million that is made out to private vendors. The one that is shaded in blue is basically state-backed or state-secured. So if Detroit Public Schools is not here, then the state will be responsible for finding ways to pay this debt. So if you look, there's only this $51 million that is not backed by the state. In this slide, I'm trying to show some of the difference between the city of Detroit's bankruptcy and then Detroit Public Schools. And when the city of Detroit went through its bankruptcy, the state aid, whatever was covered by state aid, it was 100% recovered. Whereas almost all of Detroit Public Schools is state-backed or it's covered by state aid. So if Detroit Public Schools goes through bankruptcy, there isn't really, based on what happened before, there isn't really anything that will be cut except that $51 million which is owed to private vendors, which will not help Detroit Public Schools very much. So the key takeaways from this presentation is that Detroit Public Schools has gone through tremendous change in the last 10 years. It has implemented a variety of practices to save money. If the debt is taken away, as the audit shows from last year, the district had a surplus of $13 million if you take the debt away from those numbers. And the school district is running out of cash. It can't borrow anymore. So we desperately need help right now.